All right, what is going on, guys? We are back with a small little tutorial on something that I think would be really cool for people to have if they're testing out weapon systems, or if they want a dummy, or even if they just want some like simple controllable ragdoll physics. This is a small tutorial on how to make a ragdoll target practice, or a yeah, something like for target practice, and or just a cool simulation effect if you just want to throw that out there. And this should work with anything. It'll probably look goofier on stuff that's not like rigidly jointed like this, or where it's a visible like joint. I mean, it'll still look pretty cool on, like, I'm sure a bigger or not bigger, but more fleshed out character models that are like actual people or different things. I'm sure it'll still look really cool, especially if your like rigging is good and all the mesh separation doesn't happen if you got like armor on or whatever. But or mesh bending, I guess. But with this, it looks really cool. And so what the I guess function of it is pretty simple. So what we do is, and I'm just going to be showing you guys simply how to. I'm not going to be showing you anything else. The rest of this is just for the upcoming tutorial series that I'm still working on. There's a lot of tiny things that I'm perfecting here. But I'm just going to be showing this how to apply this to the projectile and what you need to do to this character, which really isn't much. So what the effect really is, oh jeez, I forgot absolutely how loud that is. What the effect is, yeah, you could probably definitely hear that on my headset. Let me fix that for a second. Sorry. So the effect is that whatever you shoot, whatever bone you shoot, it goes limp. So you can see that it works with pretty much all the bones. The only bones that it doesn't really work with is the hands, and I think that's because it might be too specific for my projectile, even though my projectile is very small. I think just that main issue of either that or they're too specific of a bone. But it doesn't really seem to work. It works with the hands, of course, or maybe because the rigging's simplified on this static mesh. I really don't know. But nonetheless, as you can see, it just the ragdoll happens. And with how the mesh works, since it's not like relying on the weight of the legs, right? Since it's not doing that, it's going to stay standing even though these legs are technically ragdolled. So if you want to make the whole thing fall, you actually have to shoot the crotch, because that's the model's anchor point in the world. But you can see even so the head isn't fully ragdolled yet, and now that is. And then you can see also this leg isn't fully ragdoll. It was not falling like everything else was. It was only just moving straight with the bone. So you can see it only enables what it hits. And another really cool effect that this works on, if you know the C++ code for that, or how to do that, there is a plugin that does it, but it's not very good, and it's an old, outdated plugin. You can only find it on the forums, but it would be cool for dismembering, because once you dismember, once you hit this bone and it dismembers that bone from the rest of it, you have your gib models and all that stuff. It'd be really cool to do that. So this effect can work for a lot of different cases, right? So let's look at how to make that effect. So pretty simple. We're just gonna pretend like this is a projectile thing, but if you don't want it to be a projectile and you just want it to be a physics object that gets thrown or falls or whatever, just essentially just don't add the projectile component that we're going to be adding, and I'll reference that later. So what you want to do, if you want it to be a projectile, obviously here, make it a projectile. Why am I forgetting this? Oh, that's right. They took out projectile. You can't make it a projectile anymore, because they did have that where you could make that as a class. But I keep forgetting with the new versions they don't have that. So you'll want to make it a actor and just call this, I'll just call it projectile. Now here's the part where if you don't want it to be a projectile, you don't do this step. So you add the projectile movement, and you can figure out whatever the scale of your world is. My world scale is like the default this is a third-person template is what this is from. So this is like the default world scale. But if your world scale is like a lot bigger or a lot smaller for whatever reason, and whatever like idea you have or project you're building it off of, you'll want to adjust your speed accordingly. But the speed that I'm displaying here in those in that demo is 5,000. The speed, and that is purely because I wanted to be just like a very fast bullet and a very, you know, like almost as soon as you shoot, you have impact. So that's really all the other. Oh, I didn't do max speed. I must have not hit enter. That's really all you're gonna want to do for the projectile. Actually, gravity scale, I turn that off just for it to be a straight shot, and it's a good demonstration. If you want like actual bullet physics, which this is not a good demonstration of good bullet physics or any of that, if you want that, you'll probably be already well knowing what you need to do for projectile, and that this is not it, pretty much. But you can just implement the collision stuff in the code that I'm about to do here in a second. So you've got this default route scene. You're gonna want to make a capsule collision, and actually you could just make that a sphere collision, if I'm being completely honest, because we're only going to use it as a sphere. So we've got that, and the size of it, that actually should be good, I believe. So what we'll want to do with this, the collision of it, we'll want to make it custom collision, first of all. This needs to be collision enabled, so query and physics. And the object type we want this to be is a physics body. Now we're actually going to make a slight modification of this. We're going to turn off pawn, and that's just so this doesn't interact with your pawn, or if you have specific collisions that you know what's going on here, do that, and that's great. So yeah. This object one is a specific one that actually you don't have to worry about. This has nothing to do with this. And then all the other ones you just turn on to block. Actually, you don't need to worry about visibility of camera, but you can turn all of these on. Actually, I will. And that's what's going to be done for those settings. And you'll also want to simulate hit events and turn off overlap events. And from there, just take the sphere collision back over in your components and make that the parent. So that's the well, parent of the whole blueprint and anything that we're going to add to it. Which, what we are going to add to it is a static mesh. And we just want this, not that, we just want this to be a capsule, I believe a Y capsule. Nope, sorry. Narrow capsule. And then we're just going to rotate this. That should be locked on. Just going to rotate this 90. And then move this just out of the capsule there. Alright. And if I remember correctly, I should not need to mess with any of the settings. Actually, no, the collision settings we'll need to turn on. So turn off the overlap event. Character can step up. I've got that at no, but it shouldn't really interfere with anything. Custom a collision. It's going to be collision enabled once again, and we'll make this world static. And then the actual collision of everything we'll want to put ignore, except just block physics body. And I believe that should be that. Alright, so now what we want to do is we're going to head over to our event graph. Now the bullet I had a special material that made it like glow and stuff. This one is just going to be white, but if you have a material you want to apply, or if you want a tutorial on how I made this bright orange glowing material that I think looks pretty good when it's flying through the sky. But if you want to learn that, put that in the comments, and maybe I'll do a tutorial on that, right? Anyways, so let's head over to our back to our sphere, and we're going to scroll down to the events. And what we want is a on component hit, right? Let's drag off of this. Now I have like emitters and stuff for particles and whatever. You don't really need to worry about that. But on let's see, on hit, what we'll want to do is, let's see, right here, want to check is valid, because what we're going to be getting is a few things off of our hit. So let's drag off of our hit and break that hit result, and we want to cast off of the hit component. Now, if you're doing this, like if you're doing this ragdoll in an actor, you can, but you'll be seeing later, I'm just purely using like the static mesh like component. I'm just dragging that right in. I'm not doing like an actor or anything like that. So that's why we're getting component, not hit actor. And we'll cast it to skeletal mesh component, and right click that and just make it a pure cast, and then drag the as skeletal to the input object. Now if it's valid, great, we can continue on, and what we'll want to do actually off of this is set all bodies to all bodies below simulate physics. And so what this will do is, it's all bodies below and it's referencing a bone, it will simulate the physics. So that's why, like, if you simulate the pelvis, it'll do all the bones too. Or, you know, if you do the leg, it'll do all the bones below that. So that's why it does it like that. I don't believe there's one for like a single bone simulation, but it might also look a little weird because you're only making one bone not rigid, so it might make things look a little weird. But anyways, that's what we'll want to do if it is valid, right? If it's not valid, what we'll do is we'll just drag it off, destroy actor, which means it's just hit something else that we don't really care about and we're not going to do it with. But we are going to keep this because we're going to connect it once it hits anyways. So what we want to do is get that hit bone name and drag that off of the hit result, drag that onto the in bone name. Now what we need to also do on this is the new simulate, so that way it is simulating, because otherwise if you uncheck that, it stops the simulation, which actually could be really cool if you wanted like to alternate it, like every other hit it simulates or doesn't simulate, which could like make it, you know, like freeze up and then it go limp and simulate the physics again, which would be a really cool like non-statue mechanic that if you wanted to implement something like that. So that's I believe all we will need to do for that. And so we can just save this, Control Shift S, and compile it. And then what we'll want to do is on our how to get the mannequin, right? I think if I go, actually, nope. If you just go, because I'm using the third person template, so that's how I have the mannequin. If you don't, if you're not using a third person template or using your own character, that's great. But if you're using something like the first person template or whatever that doesn't have the mannequin, what you can do is go to the Unreal Marketplace, and there's a free animation animation pack. It's called the Anim Starter Pack, and it does include the UE4 mannequin as well. So that's pretty much all I'm just going to use. I'm just going to drag in this UE4 mannequin, and let me actually drag in the third person one because those materials are already loaded. And so that is not what I wanted. Drag this in, and I'll move this guy here in the back so that way we're just, yeah, okay, cool. So we'll drag this guy in. Actually, I'm going to keep him up here for a point of reference of what the settings are. And one thing that I do remember is that the collisions on our guy should be, physics actor and simulate. That's what I thought. So this guy needs to be physics actor, which he already is good, and then simulate generated hit events. And I believe that should be it. So if I go, if I go over to my gun, let me just change it to the projectile and see if we did this right, which I sure hope we did. Then it should be shooting the white one now. Come on, buddy. Yeah, it's shooting the white one. All right, and as you can see, now they're not destroying as quickly, but I think that's because let me see, projectile. Yep, that's because we didn't connect this here, so we need to connect it so that way it destroys every time. Now if we play, great. Now they destroy every time, and obviously they work. And yeah, so that's it. That's how you make the ragdoll simulated physics guy. It's really cool target practice, and like I said, I just kind of thought of that statue mechanic where you could like simulate and turn the simulation on and off and alternate that and do like interesting things. That'd be really cool. So yeah, there's plenty of different applications you can use for this. I'm just using it as a test dummy because guess what? It's kind of cool and fun, and it looks fun, and it also tells you how accurate your hits are. It's really good if you don't want to just do a bunch of readouts. You can be like, oh well, this is simulating pretty accurately. If you want to read out me, you can still do a readout. And yeah, so it's cool stuff. Cool stuff. These are completely different guys. These are for mesh destruction. Which I need to start implementing chaos since we're in 23 now. But yeah, that can be different tutorials on different days if you guys would like. So yeah, if you did like this tutorial, so there's a few hiccups in it. Sorry about that. If you did like this tutorial, please hit the like button and subscribe for more tutorials like this. I'm still working on a first-person shooter tutorial series. That's kind of what this little demo area is, where I kind of just work on the specifics and the lesson plan and how we want to do things. So yeah, if you want to stick around for that, or if you want to stick around for some of my other random videos, I've been posting music stuff lately because that's a lot of work that I've been doing as well. But yeah, I appreciate it, and leave a comment if you have any suggestions or ideas on future like one-off tutorials. Or ideas or concepts that you guys might want to learn. Yeah. Anyways, thank you once again so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.